guys are here on time, so I say we dive in and then reward people who are on time, and everyone else can just catch up on the replay. That work for you? Yeah.
I'm good if you're good. Yeah, yeah. Sorry. I'm like reading this list of names. I see like friends on here. I'm like, hey.
Oh, yeah. It looks
Just
like a
sucked right
great
in.
group of people here. But yeah, I definitely before I was like, oh, they're here, they're here, they're here. All right. So maybe just for those who don't know who you are, I'm assuming, and this probably not most people will know who I am, because a lot of the registrations came through REM and social. But for those who might not know who you are, why don't you give them the like 60-second
60
elevator on
second.
who Taylor is?
Yeah, I guess like real estate went for me like many people wanted to go for them. Uh I started out and I learned some fundamental things. I had a background in sales. I already done mortgages. I actually never received a regular paycheck as an adult. I was 100% commission. So when I came into real estate, I really felt like I had some advantages, and they turned out to be right. So in my first 32 months, I had made over $1 million in commissions, sold over 180 houses, and got into the top 2% in the world. So that was something that did well, but it was also not without its stress and challenges. And then I became a team leader because I had too much volume to manage. So it was actually in my second year that I started a team, and now I've been an out of production team leader, 3 years without selling any houses at all. And
Yeah.
now I'm kind of 15% of our overall volume. My team did over $60 million in production last year, which was about 140 some transactions. And I guess what other people call me for is a variety of things. But one of the things that I'm passionate about is getting people started. The realtors that start on my team, we have some impressive rookies. Like I think Jane is going to have done almost 40 deals in her first year.
It's a good first year. I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
not
yeah.
bad. Like I know my first year a lot different. I think it took me, I mean, I did a lot of leases. Like I think I did 10, 12 leases in the first couple months, and that allowed me to pay bills. But it took me 6 months to get my first actual sale. And it was a lot of trial and error. And then I figured out the marketing side, which is kind of where this conversation, so Taylor and I just have been chatting a lot lately because, we like each other. And we kind of noticed we came at a lot of this stuff from different perspectives. So like Ian's very much on the marketing side of things, his is very much on the sales side of things, and we both work to try to essentially start figuring out the other person's side of things.
And I love where the conversation takes us because, like, in my third year, I did 60 transactions in 6 months. And that was a sales driven process. That was not like what my business is now, which is like has marketing as well as sales, but that's really where my strength was.
Yeah.
But Andrew, your story was so interesting because you started in real estate and you saw the gap, right?
Yeah, and a lot of it was initially for me that I went to an office that was more sales oriented, and but it was like, I had that classic thing where like day one, it's like, here's the phone book, start at A, which I love the Dean Jackson tip of no, start at D because everyone's given up by then. So you're going after fresh prospects. It's one of my favorite tips. But like that stuff didn't work for me. Like, but I was blogging every day. I was pretty active on Facebook because Instagram wasn't really a thing yet. But I was really big on that, and I started getting a lot from my marketing efforts and getting a lot of traction there, starting to get leads come in. But I was also awful at the conversion side. Like I remember one of the first leads I ever got in from a paid Google ad. They wanted like a list of houses. And I wish I could go back and find my first lead follow-up email because I was like, okay, I got to talk to them about like qualifying them because someone said you got to qualify your leads. And I remember that first email was like, all right, I asked them a couple questions to qualify them, like, timeline, budget, yada, yada. And I was like, oh, but if I'm going to show them a house, I need to have them on a BRA. So, okay, I got to explain agency to them. By the time this email was done, it was probably a good 500 words. And yeah, like that's how much of a beginner I was when I first started getting leads in. Like I had no clue what I was doing. Um, and it basically I mean it got better from there, but it started pretty low. And then it just kind of I had to learn trial by fire, and I burnt a lot of time and money by not having a sales process. I figured
And
out the
as
lead.
somebody Go ahead.
I was saying I figured out the lead side, but it took way longer to figure out the second part, which is arguably the most important part.
And that's why I find it so interesting because I talk to agents on my team now and they're like, yeah, I sent this lead like this email or this text.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, if it's ever that long, you're in two scenarios. One, you're not going to get the deal, or two, she's going to leave you, dude. Okay? Because like when if you're sending text messages that don't look like friends are like, a sentence or two at a time,
Yeah.
you
One
know?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like what people have tolerance for. So that's something that's very interesting. But once you started to wander into the other side, the way you were able to get people at extension. So first off, you were saying that you ran a lead ad and it was a list of houses.
Yeah. Now, what lead ads didn't exist, like the how we call lead ads with Facebook, those did not exist back then.
Mm.
So I bought a domain name called listingsearch.ca, which I let go after I stopped selling, and someone bought up and pointed it to their site. So I wish I still had it. It was a terrible page, but basically it was just a page that said get all the listings in your inbox, fill out the information below. It was like a embedded, it was from a program at the time called 123 Contact Form. I think they were just the top result when I searched for embeddable contact forms. Then I had to teach myself what embeddable meant at the time. But like I got it up, put it on the site, and it was just like name, email, phone number, where you're looking, what type of home do you want, what's your budget, submit. That was the entire page. It was like a slightly beige background. And I put a fake clip art diamond at the top to at least look like it had some texture to the page, and that was it. Um, it was bad, but it worked. Like it was one of the, because no one
Mhm.
else, especially in my area, doing a lot back then. And started getting leads in pretty consistently. Then my blog was picking up traction. I started putting those types of calls to action in the blog. And between those two, it got to a point where I was getting like maybe not at the beginning a lead a day, but it started getting pretty close to like within 6 months of blogging consistently, every time a blog post went up, I'd get a lead or two, unless it was just like a fun, jokey. Because like this other thing is, it was not all my leads were all my blog posts were designed to get people to reach out. Sometimes it was just more like trust building and fun, and I really like that type of content too.
So that was the beginning, but then it went like light speed. Like I remember seeing you because I've seen Andrew probably a couple times a year for like a decade now.
Yeah.
And I remember running into Andrew in high production marketing where you were doing all the ads and you were like, listen, man, I've got the total solution. I just won't sleep anymore.
It works.
It did work
Yeah.
because Just Sell Homes, like you ended up building a business that now has quite a few employees.
Yeah, so we got a good sized team now. That obviously it allowed me to get REM as well and bring that in and really take it up a notch from there. But yeah, like we figured out pretty quickly for us that the marketing side of things was easy. And as I started training people, because like when you start doing it, people start asking you, especially like this was the early days of social media for business. We got invited a lot to talk about how to do it and show other people how to do it. And they started getting leads in. And then, as you can imagine, the challenges that I faced early on, which was not converting leads, our clients started seeing too. So it was like that early
Mhm.
part was we started generating them a lot of leads and then they weren't converting them. So it became okay, now we got to help them on that side of business. So we started like that's why I developed the wheelhouse system was to help build out a system and framework to help people figure out that side of things. But once you know how to generate leads, that part's simple. That's where it dovetails nicely into where are the quality leads, the topic of today.
Yeah, that's really what a lot of people talk about because when you take a look at lead generation overall, I gotta say that from a criticism standpoint, is that they're not getting better at finding people that want to buy and sell houses, but they are getting better at finding you more leads. Like as the lead generation industry as a whole. I remember when I was speaking on stage in like 2018, I was talking about how at the time, it was, I believe, 8 million leads related to real estate to 1 million MLS sales in the United States. That was where that number was from. And at only 2 years later, that had doubled to 16 leads for 1 million MLS sales.
I think the last I heard it was 40 million, but don't quote me on that.
So that's incredible, right? 40 million is the population of Canada to 1 million MLS sales. That's a heck of a funnel, right?
Yeah. And I
So
think that
that,
Oh, go ahead.
Well, that always leaves us with like, what is a lead, and when, like, how do you define quality? Because most of the lead generation sources, they don't want to talk to you about quality of leads.
Yeah. And this is a big one that because like obviously like studying and trying to teach myself marketing and learning more of like especially on like the B2B side of things, they always talk about like MQLs and SQLs. And there's never that conversation in real estate of essentially that type of lead stage breakdown. So like you're familiar with MQLs and SQLs. So I think we've
I
talked.
am. We've talked about it, but
Yeah.
I think that this needs to be talked about
Yeah.
more.
So on the MQL SQL, it's not complicated. The MQL stands for marketing qualified lead. SQL is sales qualified lead. So marketing qualified lead is we just got people's numbers up because they're somewhat interested in this topic. A sales qualified lead is when they move into this is someone that has the chance that they're going to do business with us. But a lot of people are expecting what you'd call an SQL when they're generating MQLs, and those need longer nurturing because they're not ready to buy. They're not sales qualified yet. And like, and when I do it in real estate, because a lot of people aren't used to the language around MQL and SQL, I try to change it to leads versus prospects. So
Hmm.
lead is a lead of people who are interested in something you have. It doesn't mean they're moving. A prospect is someone who's going to be moving. Doesn't mean they're ready to move with you or work with you or anything like that. But a prospect is someone who's going to be moving. It's just whether that's with you or not remains to be decided. But a lead is not a prospect yet. And I think when most people say like I want quality leads, what they're actually saying is I want prospects.
Hmm.
Most of the time, they're not necessarily actually saying I just want more leads. It's or quality leads. It's I want prospects, which are much further down the funnel.
Right. And that's the thing that people don't see. So
Yeah.
marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads normally need a different response.
Yeah.
Marketing qualified leads want more content from you. Sales qualified leads have questions and need answers, right? Like they want to talk to you about this. And so we've often run into these people, but that's really what you want is these sales qualified leads, or what Andrew calls prospects.
Yeah. And that's
Now,
a big part of it.
yeah, because like, so let's just talk about statistics in general. Like if you were to door knock the average neighborhood, every fifth door statistically is considering moving this year.
Yeah.
Okay, just when we lay it out that way. So if you were dialing through a phone book, you would have to believe that if they're homeowners and they had a home phone when phone books were a thing, that you would be able to say that, like, statistically, you're going to get through this, right?
Yeah.
But now when you take a look at web leads and the rate of energy that you need to put into the conversion process, to waste that energy on marketing qualified leads is going to leave you with like lower quality results
And
overall.
you're gonna just feel drained and a little bit demoralized. Like it, like when you hear about, and I know like there's people who mentioned it when they. So I was like, what do I get the people who didn't realize they opted in for something, or those people who are way too early in the process? It's you're generating people that aren't ready for a phone call yet, and you
Hmm.
have to think about like the kind of the example I've been using a lot lately is like if this is someone who's like close, like ready to go, and this is the general public over here at some point along this path, you have to generate their contact info. The closer it is to hear that you're contacting them like they're ready to go, the more expensive they're going to be.
And that's because they're further down the full funnel and they're responding to different content that has different budgets behind it.
And if you get them over
So,
here, you got to bring them all that way.
right. So there's a couple of different ways to talk about this. One is from the funnel.
Yeah.
So if we say that the funnel is top of funnel, people have problems, but don't yet know that real estate is the answer. So they're normally searching for their problems. Like I'm running organization because I'm running out of storage space. I
Yeah.
actually need a larger house, but that'll come later. And then in the middle of the funnel, what we see is people that understand that real estate is a potential solution to their problem, or a likely potential solution to their problem. And now they're starting to engage content based on that. And that's because they're starting to orient. They've already observed, now they're orienting to this decision. And then they're going to move into decide and act. That is bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
Most of us have nowhere near the budget it would take to play in the content loops at the bottom of the funnel. Think about a budget that would have you competitive with Realtor.ca in Canada, or what like a large brand would put into their foremost sites.
Yeah, it's 7 and 8 figures to compete
Like
at.
even to maintain the SEO, a lot of this
Yeah,
stuff is $100,000 plus a year.
easily.
So what we're saying is from a marketing perspective, all of us that are looking as marketing to be part of our business, maybe not our entire business, like you can build a lead generation shop. That's not how my business is designed.
Yeah.
Our primary client is repeat and referral. And then we also have a great network and kind of work out from there. But we do a fair amount of business when it comes to people that are coming in from web-based leads based on marketing. And that conversion process is something that I think more people should know more about. Because when I first started getting leads, I was getting filtered list stuff. And I was like, this can't be right. This is 122 leads for $7. I have not found the problem yet, is
Yeah.
what that said to me.
And what did you do? Like, if you were today to get those 122 in, what would that look like on your end for like what
So
happened at that moment?
okay, so if I was just getting those, basically what we're trying to learn is who will talk to us.
Yeah.
So what we know will improve their likelihood to talk to us is a response time 7 minutes or less. That likely means their phone is in their hand and they're still engaging real estate. That's when they came in as a lead. The other thing that we need to realize is that those people did not only put their contact information into our website. We are in a race with other agents. If someone is willing to exchange their contact information online or doesn't know what sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook actually means, then they're going to be on like quite a few different websites trying to like get access to property. And that means that we're normally in a race with other agents. So we're trying to land 7 combos, 7 email phone combos in the first 24 hours.
Now that's also
Once we get,
to Google though, right? Like
hmm,
they're going on Google, they might opt in on a bunch of different ones. That might not happen.
true,
So you gotta look
but
at this.
we approach it as though we're in a race. And then 24 hours later, we're probably going to have that list under 50.
Yeah.
So in the first 24 hours, we'll find all the people that didn't talk to us. We'll find quite a few people that that have given us a timeline because that's actually what we're trying to establish. You could call all of those people and say, "Are you buying a house right now?" And if you had a list like 120, there's probably 20 in there, right?
Yeah.
But will they tell you that is the big question before you form a relationship. Now, instead, if you rephrase the question and say, when do you plan to buy a property? Now, all of a sudden, you're going to end up with like 50 that probably have enough reasonable timeline to give you a timeline, even if they say things like next spring. And now you can save the cost of bringing in those leads later when they're in higher competition by just staying in contact. So
That's
think about leads as like a timeline and know that what you really want is a conversion over an 18-month period. 30% of them that you're going to talk to just happen to be in the next 90 days. 30% of them are probably going to be somewhere between 3 and 9 months, and then 9 months to 12 months. But if you find out when, now you can just tune your CRM so you get notified when it's time to make your monthly or 90-day contacts. And if you do that, every 100 people in your database that are like, Andrew's my realtor, right? If they know you like that, 20 of them are going to do business with you this year. And that group of 100 actually knows of 20 more that are moving this year that they would refer to you if they called you their agent.
that's roughly like the number we look at for like 100 people in your database. There's about 20 deals to be had. But when we say that, it's of people in your database who know your name.
There you go.
Yeah.
And what I think about is people are having real estate conversations all of the time, whether you're there or not. So if you want them to say that you're their realtor, you're actually competing with the person they sit next to at their kids' activities this week. Like the realtors are everywhere.
Yeah.
So that person starts to get more frequency of contact that you have. Like I know you might be in heartache and woe when your friend uses somebody else as an agent. But if you retrace the steps and you're like, when was the last time I had a real estate conversation with this person? Oh, they're a friend of mine. I didn't want to bring up real estate. Well, then who are they talking about real estate with? Because they're talking about it, just not with you.
just reminded me of a great tip from our mutual friend Ralph Ciancio. I was
Who's a
at
legend.
Yeah, I was at an event with him, and he was giving a tip to all the newer agents that were on teams, because this was an event for people joining teams. And it was, if you're ever going to a party in an area that you work in, that morning book a showing on every house within 2 kilometers and tour it, so that when you're at the party, you're gonna seem like the expert. Because eventually, when people start talking real estate, like, I was just in that house. Here's what was good about it. Here's what was bad about it. But you specifically book a showing that morning of every house right around in the neighborhood,
That guy has such a good feel for people.
right?
You know, he would literally be taking over the kitchen at that party and talking about like, oh yeah, you should have seen this place, and he'd be making jokes like, the one had the big industrial hook in the bedroom. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
Ralph's great, but that's a sweet move.
Yeah, and it's such easy because you can then talk about like the different models in the neighborhood. Oh yeah, it was just at that house around the corner that's up for sale that, they put the knee wall here instead of completely opening it up, and they did this, and here's how they did their house, and like even those little things just show how well you know the market. And you're surprised how like those little things is actually a really good conversion tool, because they need to
That's
see you
great.
past being a friend and more as a real estate person. And that's either going to you have to do that, whether that's before you get the lead or after. And most people don't think about that has to happen, but it can happen before with your marketing, or it has to happen after with the sales. And that's a
Totally.
gap that people have.
Well, let's lay it out from like before and after. So where people want to be with their business when it comes to, is their marketing resulting in actual business? And maybe we could go to the deal side and work our way backward and talk about how it eliminates a big group. So every deal normally had to have a pending period unless you live in places where no conditions are a myth. Uh, and then before that, they had to normally go and view property with you.
Yeah.
And then before that, you had to be the realtor that they chose. And normally at that point, it's kind of interesting as to how you got there. Like most markets in Canada and in the US over the last few years have been relatively hot, which makes real estate kind of a shitty game of tag. You know, like a lot of agents can be competitive when the market is fast because availability is an ability when real estate goes fast. And now that's starting to change a little bit, but in that moment, like how did you get into the property with that person? Did you close them at the party like Ralph was talking about or at a barbecue? Did you find that person through your marketing? Is that something that happened? But if you're not finding people through your marketing, this is where to kind of tune in here. So then you had to come in contact with those people. They have to know, like, and trust you to do business with you. So at some point, you had to become known to them. And then there had to be a part where they kind of liked you. So sometimes it's at the property viewing. This is a big conversion key for us. So many people don't get to the viewing or get to a viewing, and because the house is not the right house, it's a very short viewing and they lose their opportunity. So as part of our conversion process, we show 2 for 1.
Yeah.
So if you called me and you said, hey, I wanted to see this, I'm going to find anything that I can show that's relatively similar and close by. And I'm going to say like, hey, I found this other listing. Would you see this one as well? And many buyers will. The thing that it did for us is it showed them that they're not limited to seeing just our listings with us.
Yeah.
We showed 2 and it demonstrates that. Sometimes it's the first time they ever got to do conjunctive showings. A lot of people don't know that's a value to go to see houses back to back. Well, try booking 6 listings with 6 different listing agents. You're going to see them over a week,
Yeah.
right? It's going to be dinner time here and breakfast in the other
Curiosity.
place.
Do you ever get an objection from a seller that, hey, they booked a showing on our house, why are you now showing them another one on the market?
Not come up.
Never come up. That's good.
Nope. And if it did, what I would tell them is like, well, what every buyer needs to make a choice is 3. They need to walk through the house they're going to buy and 2 others to give them context. So in doing this, we're actually trying to load them up.
Yeah. Making yours look the best here.
Well, like even then, like we are trying to bring you a buyer, but if they don't like your house, they're not going to be the highest paying buyer anyway,
Yeah.
right? So that's part of the game, but we actually have not run into trouble there.
That's good.
So when we go 2-for-1, that also allows us to have much more time to develop that likeness, to build that rapport, to qualify, to get further with those people while we're face to face. And that has massively increased our conversion. So showing 2-for-1 or going to what we call a buying blueprint meeting. Now, buying blueprint meeting is basically the opposite of a market evaluation. A market evaluation only exists because people have to sign before they list. That's it. Right? If they could have people walk through, if they could have an open house before they signed the listing agreement, they would. And that's exactly how buying is working now. Is they're going to view properties and they're writing agreements in many places, in many cases, at the time of offer. So we have a buying blueprint meeting where people actually go through a similar experience, but on the buying side, related to buying a property, and it helps us solve so many problems. And then at the end of that, they will sign on to us as clients. So we're either going 2-for-1 into the buying blueprint meeting, or we're going directly to the buying blueprint meeting if that's what that person needs or makes sense for us.
I like that. And now you get a new lead in, let's say they've just sent a request to realtor.ca. And
Mhm.
it's just been like, I want more info, a very generic, I want more information on the property. What's the process from there to the buyer blueprint?
So always get to the phone.
Yeah.
And the biggest mistake is being like, okay, this comes in from realtor.ca. These people want to talk to me about this house, and then talking about that house.
Yeah.
Instead, what we want to do is get them on the phone and we want to start to understand them more. So we use an acronym called FORD, which stands for Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams. And we're going to try to find that out. And we actually ask questions that are less invasive because we use the house as a filter. This is how it works. Hey, Andrew, did you know that place has 4 bedrooms? Is that enough bedrooms for everybody? Now I'm going to find out about your family, right? And then if I want to know about your occupation, yeah, this property is over in Summerwood. What's the drive like to work from there? Now we're going to talk about your work.
Yeah.
And then, when you think about living here, when you guys go out on the weekends, where do you need to get to? I'm going to find about your recreation. And then finally, how do you talk about somebody's dreams on the first phone call? I have a different question. Can you get there? Can you get the D in Ford? Here's how I do it. How does this house purchase fit into your long-term plan? Now I know so much about those people that I can really connect to them. And every time they give me a response, I'm using a technique called go too deep.
Yeah.
So you tell me about how many bedrooms it is and how many people's in your family, and then I'm going to ask 2 questions about that. Oh, how old are your kids? Oh, that's great. Like, just any follow up, like how is this going to, which school are they going to go to? So just by doing that, I'm going to get way more information, but I also have to ask the important questions that we all need to know. Are you working with a realtor?
Yeah.
And are you pre-approved? But asking those questions is crummy. I don't ask those questions. If I want to know whether or not you're working with a realtor, I ask how many houses you viewed. And then if you said that you viewed any, I ask you how you are viewing those houses. Was it open houses, through listing agents, and so on?
Yeah.
What I learned is that often if you ask somebody if they have a realtor, they may have already had contact with the realtor,
They're not
but
signing.
I didn't realize that when they said it with their own mouth, that they would claim that realtor emotionally. So if I say, "Hey, are you working with a realtor?" and they're like, "Yeah, Brad showed me a couple of houses." Well,
Yeah.
then they might not even like Brad, but they just told me Brad's their agent, so Brad's their agent. It's a verbal commitment. Now look at the side door. We go in and we say, "Hey, how many properties have you been viewing?" They say they've seen 3. Oh, how have you been seeing those properties? And they're like, "Yeah, you know what? There's this guy from work that also does real estate. His name is Brad, but I don't know." They totally talk about it differently, and I see my in,
Yeah.
right? So now I'm getting Brad's client, but that's because I didn't make a mistake of being too direct. The other thing, instead of asking if they're pre-approved, because so many people know to just say yes to get access to houses, I asked them how the meeting at the bank went. Oh, really? How'd the meeting at the bank went? Go. And most people, one, aren't used to that question, so they don't have like a pocket lie.
Yeah.
It makes it more difficult for them to evade me. And I get more information from that. So those are a couple that I kind of sweep up on as part of my conversion process to those people that are really bottom of funnel, meaning that they're about to take action and go right away. Is
That's a
that what
lot.
you're looking for?
That's a lot of like, the thing where it's like if you walk into a store and they say, "Can I help you today?" The better question is what brings you in here today? And basically that's what you've done is you've taken that concept of what brings you in here today instead of how can I help? And you're getting that information from them, which yours also fits perfectly into my favorite closing line, which is because of what you told me, here's what we should do next.
Love it.
But you can't say that until you have that other information. And that's where a lot of people
Absolutely.
go so fast to like, I gotta get them here, I gotta get them there, I got this. No, like until you can answer and say, because of what you told me, here's what we should do next, you're closing too soon.
And really, I think that more agents should take a look at this part of their job and realize that this is their at bats.
Yeah.
Like you should be trained into this so that you can have these. Like I like to slide timelines back and forth. If I want to know where you're going, I need to ask about where you've been. Oh, where do you live now? Like if I'm at an open house, hey, is this kitchen bigger or smaller than yours? Now I know if you're upgrading or downsizing.
Yeah.
But crafting this language is part of the sales side. Great questions and understanding how to work that process. And then you can see like a mirror image of this on the marketing side. So what type of things on the marketing side help you filter for quality?
And that's where we get into like what are the problems they're gonna like, for example, what are they gonna type into Google when they're further upstream than I'm looking for a house here? Like great agent, you and I both know Alex Wilson out of Toronto. One of the webinars that did really well for him early COVID is when those rules came in about like you can't evict anyone. He hosted a webinar right away with a paralegal of what are your options as a landlord with these new rules, and consider his entire business is built around selling to investors. Every single person who signs up for that webinar is a potential client because they're all
Hmm.
real estate investors because they're all landlords. So he is going up to that problem they have over here that an ideal client would have and getting them before they've gone to anything else. And he's now generating marketing qualified leads. We don't know if any of these investors are in the market to buy another property right now. So they're not a sales qualified lead yet, but he just generated a ton of marketing qualified leads, provided them value with that webinar, got them the answers they needed, and now he can start sifting and sorting through those to find the sales qualified leads when they're ready. But it's what are the challenges they're having? Like even for my business, like if you guys remember before the housing category, so this is now a while ago. If you ever ran ads, you had to certify you were compliant with local regulations. And if you didn't, your ad would be rejected for discrimination. You said to hit certify. That's a very specific problem agents have when they're trying to run their own ads. And they always don't know how to certify compliance. So I just upload a video that's how to certify compliance on a disapproved Facebook ad for real estate. 3 minutes, go here, click here, do this. 28,000 views on that video from a 3 minute one thing, threw it up there. And every single one of those views is a realtor running Facebook ads. And as soon as they see that, they're like, oh, that's someone who knows how to do it better. And now they're coming into our funnel. And those are all, again, for us, marketing qualified leads that we know are running Facebook ads already. So again, we're looking at what are those pain points earlier in the process that's going to cause them to type something into Google or try and find a solution to it. And then we want to provide that solution.
And that's a big part of how you kind of design your marketing, is to know your ideal client.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get everyone's attention, you can't afford it. You can't afford it. I'm sorry. You're just too big a pool.
If you
So if
can,
you look on my
you're
wall
number
behind
one in the
me,
market already.
yeah, if you look at my wall behind me, this is my ideal client profile. These are my real estate clients. I visualize someone like them sitting at every one of my meetings. These people have specific issues. They're trying to deliver 18 summers to their kids. They're between 30 and 65 years old. One of them is a professional in most couples. They drive at least one new car. They can manage most of the small stuff, so they end up having more pets. There's a whole bunch of hallmarks. Like I can find them. If I had to find them all in a group at one time, I'd be looking at Costco.
Yeah.
this is my people. And the more I know about them, the more I know how they visualize and what challenges they run into. And then I can take that to the marketing side and I can call to their problems. And people can't see the solution from where they are in their problems. Their problem's like a hole, and they're in the bottom of the hole. They can't see the solution. They don't know their way out. And so many people make the mistake of calling out solutions. And it's like why aren't you getting a response? And it's because you're not calling to the problem. You got to pack up that solution and like walk it into the problem
Yeah.
and then show it to them and show them how to use it, and then they can get out of their problem.
And
So
most people are
market to
bringing the
people's
solution in too
problems.
early. Like they're bringing that
Mhm.
in so fast into it. First, you got to get them to identify that problem because they might not even know they have the problem yet.
And that's because most real estate agents identify as salespeople, and marketing is an illusion to them. Like they want to do sales, which is answering questions and providing solutions. That's the sales part of this. But the marketing side is calling to those problems for people to step forward,
Yeah.
right? Further up the funnel, more it's about problems. So, what are the problems of your ideal client profile? My ideal client profile is stressed about moving because having a family is enough to manage. And then getting to the right neighborhood with the right schools and all of these other stuff is just like super overwhelming. And then the thought of doing business well as a family at the same time, like they just need help.
Yeah, like posts used to do really well for me, for example, is I did in-depth school profiles on all the schools in our area. So I used sold them
Mm.
more. So it'd be like I'd have a 1,000-word blog post about this school, 1,000-word blog post about this school. And at the bottom, the call to action is considering a move within the school district, fill out the form below, and we'll send you a list of what's available in this school district. So it's a really soft one, but it's like 1,000 words. And the nice thing is, no one's trying to rank for schools. Like
Hmm.
even the school itself isn't even really trying to rank. They're going to be number one, but it's such an easy thing that you can get up to number two on because so few are trying to rank for schools. But like if your ideal is young families, elementary school profiles are one of the best things to do. So
Okay, so let's dig into that for a second.
yeah,
So if most agents are looking for families with kids, that's like the most common profile. And they're coming in looking for families with kids, and let's say they decided to adopt this process. So you were saying that you made landing pages where people could gather information about which school and maybe have a map of the school district. I know that maps do well
yep.
on lead conversion
You need a
pages.
first page that's kind of like what are the best schools in Aurora. Aurora's where I sold. That's what I do is I'd have a kind of huge landing page that answers that question. Like I'm thinking, what are they typing into Google? Sometimes it's what are the best schools in Aurora. It might just be like, what are the elementary schools in Aurora? That page, high level, goes through the schools with like a 1 or 2 sentence descriptor, but those are all then all hyperlinked to an in-depth profile on that school. And in an ideal world, you would actually take it a step further and go interview the principal at each of those schools and get some
Woo.
quotes from them. Like it sounds like a lot of work, and I mean it is, but it's really effective because not only now are you getting unique information that no one else has, you're building a relationship with people in the community. And
Mm-hmm.
like this is one that I think a lot of people like because a lot of the advice you get for content marketing out there, which is what brings in higher quality leads before they become a lead, is they look at like what's Uber doing for content marketing? What is all these huge companies doing? At a local level, you can't look at it exactly the same. It's like a podcast. I was having this conversation with a team recently where they did a podcast and it didn't really lead to a lot, but their issue was they were just trying to find people with big social followings as guests to drive people. Those aren't local. And if I was going back to sales today in Aurora, or now I'm in Newmarket, so I do Newmarket. If I wanted to build a great podcast in Newmarket, I actually wouldn't care if a single person really actually listened to the podcast. It's a tool to get in front of local people. So I would call up every business owner locally and invite them on the podcast, and we'd film it in person. I'm using it as the tool to build that relationship with someone who also meets a lot of my ideal profile. So like, what are the businesses my ideal clients are going to? I'm going to go do that. And then when I film the podcast, I'm going to take clips of it and send it to them and tag them and try to get them to send it out to their network because I want them to put me in front of their network.
Okay, I'm going to break this down. So what Andrew is talking about is called status as a service. When someone is on a podcast, what they experience is status. They get recognized, they get to promote it on their social media, their Instagram's tired. This is like excitement to them, right? And then the other thing is that I call them hubs. There's people in your there's people in every community that have higher frequency of contact with many people than others. Your average 9 to 5er, they have a very set pool of the people they go to work with and the people they spend time with in the evenings and weekends. And it's like a small Rolodex that gets a high frequency. But now you come into contact with like the owner of a tire company, like a tire store, that guy knows so many more people, right? And a lot of times the activities they do outside of work are related to their business. So it's like business groups and different things like that. This is what we call a hub. So what Andrew is saying is that he's going to offer status as a service to become connected to the most connected people in his community called hubs. And then he's going to use them as like satellites. That's what we are talking about when we say marketing.
Yeah. And it's similar to like how I do with Just Sell Homes. Like we specifically do a lot with broker owners and coaches because, for example, like a lot of you found us through the online world, but look at people in your office. How many, and this can be even top producers who aren't connected online with anyone in the industry. They're just doing their thing. So when they need someone to help with their Facebook ads, they often go to their broker and say, who do you know? So we get a lot of business from that type of thing. And it's the exact same strategy I employ in a local area. So it's like, even with Over a Pint, it was the first like 20 episodes were more about who do I get to spend the time with, as opposed to I'm doing this to get a lot of views and get people in. Because like you're never going to host a local podcast, especially if you're in an area that's like 100,000 or less population that's getting millions of views. That's not happening. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like your best case, maybe 5 to 10,000 per episode if you're in a 100,000 community. Like if you got
Wow.
10,000 an episode in a 100,000 community, you are arguably one of the most successful podcasts that's ever existed from a percent of audience standpoint. Like
Totally.
it's a
And
really
that's what this
hard
game
thing.
is this big like statistics game is like think about it as a pool and then filters to reduce the pool to
Yeah,
the people that will meet the criteria of wanting to talk to you about real estate and being open to you being their guide.
yeah,
That's like the whole idea is to start just by collecting names and then to distill it down to that
yeah.
and then just to develop relationships. Like the conversion process is qualification and rapport building until you make relationships with the people that can take action. That's like the
And
whole thing.
with content marketing too, I think a lot of people also they think, especially like with blogging and website content, that it's purely like I have to rank for this keyword. But you also want to think about what I call conversion content. This is content that it's not necessarily going to bring people in from SEO, but it's going to help build the know, the like, or the trust. And typically on the like and the trust side. And that's important because a lot of people, like I see this all the time. I'm sure, Taylor, you've seen this at a lot of conferences where the speakers say no, like, and trust, but they say it like it's one word. And that's 3 distinct phases, right? They're like, no, like, and trust, no, like, but no, like it's first they have to know you, then they have to like you, then they trust you. And we all know people we know and like that we don't trust with money.
And that's the way to look at it is you go the opposite way and say
Yeah.
like, okay, that person worked with this other person. They trusted them to be a guide for this scenario, right? There's a bunch of people that we like that we wouldn't trust. My wife puts it really well. She's like, I have different requirements for different relationships in my life.
Yeah.
Like this person is unreliable, but we just go for coffee. So if as
Like we
long as
all
I'm
have that
cool with once in a
friend
while
in high
saying
school
like
we wouldn't lend $100 to, but we'd gladly go have a drink with them.
you got it. Now a lot of people don't understand that if they don't like you, they won't trust you.
Yeah.
So if you go and as part of your conversion, you go and show a 2-for-1 and it's like a cold experience, like don't waste your time in following up
No.
because they have to like you to trust you.
Yeah. And know when to
And
cut.
then on the other side is that if they don't know you, they won't work with you. But that doesn't matter if you're on a bus bench or not, if you're on digital social or not. Just putting your face places doesn't make you become known because they don't know what to know you for.
Yeah.
So now in this era, it's about content and contact. So where are you putting out content? And then how are you developing relationships? Because that happens in the DMs. You might think that social media is based on what you post.
Not if it's
No,
recruiting.
not no. Like there's so many people that think that social media is based on followers and likes.
Yeah.
What about DMs and deals,
Like
right?
the biggest thing, like I would rather you post once a week and send 5 DMs a day than the opposite,
Ooh.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you will get so much more business focusing your time. Like look at my Instagram. How often do I actually post to my feed and I get business from it? And but it's entirely like I respond to stories. Or I will just straight DM someone. And I do the same thing over email. We call it like the thinking of you or thought of you thing, where it's like, I saw this and thought of you.
Yep.
And I'd send it to them. And it's just
Yep.
like very simple, it reminds you there, and then you just continue the conversation going. Like at work.
So here's like an internal web from my social media. So I have my Hack and Co social media. People will go find that, and then they see our professional content, and then they come through to my personal side. And that's where I either pass or do not pass that I'd go for like a drink or a lunch with that guy,
Yeah.
you know? And then they'll follow me. Now, I know that what I'm trying to do is go from marketing to sales. So my game is mostly in stories because stories are nurture, posting is outreach. Outreach content puts you in contact with new people. Nurture content is part of keeping the people, like you're keeping your network warm, right? So now I'm playing in stories. And if you are someone that I want more attention from, you're now my close friend. And when I post a close friend stories, I get the green circle and it's actually a lead flow. So for some of it, it's just because like I when people are close friends, I actually do post intimate, personal like
Notice, I
content.
mean, you're close friends now.
See,
Yeah.
but like that's the stuff I want to share with those people. But it's emotion that moves people in and makes them feel included. But on the other hand, if I wanted you to value me more, I know which social media screen you value the most. It's your notification center. People do not value their timeline like they do their notification center. If there's a little like indicator light by the hearts,
Yeah,
that's
get rid of it.
immediately where they're going.
Yeah.
And if they see me there, if I'm like a series regular in their notification center, I am winning. I am more likely to be that person's agent. And then if we have DMs back and forth, that's where the winning actually takes place.
Like at the top, I want to see saves and shares. Like that's from top level, like educational content, how you know it's good. But
Mm.
like if you're just starting out, you're doing educational content, you need to use saves and shares, not likes and comments, as what is driving results. If you're not getting any saves and shares, your content's not resonating. Like a lot of people will give you a like if they're liking you, they're trying to support you. They have no intent. They might not even have liked the content. They like you, so they're double tapping it to support you. That does not mean the content mattered to them at all. So I also find like likes and comments can also be a bad indicator of if this content's valuable or not. But saves and shares are, because that they're choosing to either save it for themselves, they want to come back to it later, or they want to share it with somebody else because of the value they found in it. So you want saves and shares kind of at that higher end. And then eventually it's going to be how many DMs are we getting? Like, and eventually you want to get to a point where people are reaching out to you in the DMs. At the beginning, it's a lot of outreach on your end. And that DM can be a story reply. Again, very simple, similar to the style of questions Taylor was saying, either with lead conversion. You can take questions like that, but you initially just do like they post they're out for lunch at a restaurant, be like, what'd you think of that place? And that gets a conversation started. Then you can go into your questions to learn more about where they are today. And
I
then you
totally agree.
like keep it super simple that way.
So this is like an example of what Andrew and I often talk about on non-shared Zooms.
Yeah.
We have Zoom coffees, and maybe as we go forward, this will open up a little bit, so we'll talk more shit because we do. And
Yeah.
what we want to see is whether or not this is something that is valuable to you, like this edge of where sales meets marketing. Is this something where you would like to see us maybe go forward and start to find some more experts and bring them in and talk through our two different perspectives? Do you want to see things like Andrew breaking down my business, like a running business, from the wheelhouse metrics and starting to look at improvements on that side, so that we can lead the way on that type of thing? So that's what we're trying to measure out here. I'm already seeing some comments. We've got great support, and I really appreciate you saying so.
Even my wife said yes, and she doesn't even watch over a pint.
Yeah, I saw her in the participants room, and I was like, the pressure's on for you, man.
I know, but
We
she doesn't
also
even
got some
watch
heavy
over a
hitters in
pint.
there.
Like
Matt,
her friends have watched over a pint. And like I remember one time one of them was like, that was a great episode Andrew did the other day. It was not someone in real estate. Amanda's never watched an episode. Recently I asked her why, and she said, have me on, then I'll watch one.
this is the same thing that I run into. I remember talking to my wife and mentioning casually that I had bought a company earlier that week. And she's like, "What was that?" And I was like, "Well, I told you about it." And she's like, "I don't really listen, but now you said you bought a company." And I was like, "Oh, you should listen." Uh, but also, I wanted to say hi to Matt Richling, Spark Conference, man. Well done. That was super awesome.
That was
So
where
now,
Ralph Ciancio's tip was.
yeah, man, so many heavy hitters there.
Yeah,
I really think that you got something.
yeah.
So
It
let's
was good.
pivot to questions here. So now you guys know what we're after, or what we might do. And if you have any suggestions for us, like who to get as guests, who do you want to see from, and what type of content you're looking for, or maybe just call out your problems.
Yeah.
If I could solve this, I would win more.
We've gone back and forth on turning our conversations into a public thing. We've had the ideas, like you mentioned, of like us just breaking down his business together live
Hmm.
and then looking at where we can make it better and then sharing the
Oh
results,
yeah.
good and bad. We've thought about just picking up a topic every week and talking to people. I've also had thought of just like the other options, like we bring one of you on each week and we break down your business. Like
Or
there's
even one aspect. If you wanted to
yeah,
basically say, "Hey, I have this idea for like a landing page all the way through conversion,"
yeah, let's talk it out, map it out.
totally.
We'd
Okay,
love
we're gonna
to,
turn to
yeah. Let's,
turn to questions here. The first one, am I saying this right? Is the name Renee Couvet?
I hope,
Um,
is she here? She submitted it, but is she
yeah,
still?
yeah. So
I
she says that she's an admin, tech trainer, and all-around circus ringmaster, and her biggest struggle is about keeping agents motivated. So how do you keep agents motivated on following up on leads despite the time it takes?
so
So
there's
I'm
kind
gonna
of
say that.
two approach. Like,
Go
I mean,
ahead.
I'd love your opinion on the team leader on as because like this is something you do every day. So I'll give my answer first, then we'll go to your more educated one. Um, so like I talk to a lot of team leaders, and the kind of there's two main ways we see it. One, you have to get them further down the funnel leads because if they're busy doing all this other stuff for you, they need kind of easier ones to work with in the traditional chasing, or they need skin in the game. Those are the two, like sometimes teams will make them, whether it's if you're not calling, you have to pay into a charity, or whether it's like you have to straight help pay for the lead gen. There's a few different models I've seen there. That's not as common as they're more giving them appointments than they are um, like making them call all the leads as they come in.
Hmm. And you can kind of run different shops, I suppose. When it comes down to the way that I run it, I find that there's some agents that are frustrated because they haven't had enough success with online leads.
Yep.
So the first thing is like, can you help them solve through coaching? There's so many people that don't really coach on how to work leads. And then if you were in a position where you didn't believe that winning was possible, that's where the frustration really sets in.
Yeah. Especially if your first
And then
like
there,
20 leads are like fake leads, it's very discouraging for people. Because like no matter like if you get 100 leads, there's even no matter how good your leads are, a certain percent are going to be fake every time. And if that's the first batch you get, that can be pretty discouraging for people. Like, you need at least 100 leads from a source to truly judge it, typically.
yep. And I find that like I need teammates to acclimate here. So the first thing that any one of my teammates does is make 1,000 calls.
Yeah.
Until they make 1,000 calls, they really don't know what's good, what's not good, where they were closer, where they were further away. They have no correlation in where they normally fall out of a conversation. So I really feel as though that helps them develop client feel. Where I see the success that comes out of that is that when they're at open houses, they're not blinded by the lights. They've had enough real estate conversations that they really gain experience faster. Now, also, Andrew was talking about agents who believe their job starts when somebody says, I want to buy or sell a house, where they're just like, I'm here for appointments. That's an illusion. If you talk to a personal trainer, a lot of their job is going to find people to help. So, in almost every experience, your job is to find people and help people. Now, I share my like I share opportunities with my teammates through doing things like listing multiplier and through offering leads, but that's not the primary value proposition of my team. And if it was, I'd be having a lot of struggles and probably looking for some solutions like Andrew described, where if the value is lead generation, then if these guys are doing all the work, they have to like you have to work it in or work it into the deal with them. Now, alternatively, you could be showing people how to ignite their own database. You could be teaching them how to win with the people around them. They already know and like these people, but these people are afraid to trust them because they're new or they're working their way up to being credible. And you're the credible one. So by bringing credibility to your teammates and helping them develop relationships by meaning that their faces are seen throughout the marketplace, like our teammates do things called realtoring pictures and they have quotas for them
Yeah.
because the more impressions that people get of their face on Instagram in front of anything with like a mention of a neighborhood, those are like, that's how people are like, oh yeah, Ryan, he's been doing real estate forever.
Yeah.
You
He
know,
seems
Ryan's been doing
busy.
real
He
estate
must
for
be
3 weeks.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the things that you got to kind of work on. But I think that we're letting too many inside salespeople into real estate. These house cats that think that it's just like I get appointments, they are house cats. I think that in that case, there's team leaders that are confused into paying them more and you should pay them less. And you should have teammates on your house that are either feral or full wild, meaning that they can just go and kill for themselves.
Yeah, and there are some team models I've seen where that is like forgetting his name off the top of my head right now. I had a conversation like a few years back, and he doesn't give a single lead ever to his team. It's he trains them how to get their own, and that's his team value props. Essentially, he's almost just their coach.
Yeah, I've had teammates that we've paid on their side of our splits like in the $250,000 range.
Yeah,
And those teammates are not here for leads. Those teammates are here because we're a development center. They're here because they trust me with tomorrow. Meaning, like Anthony was sitting in an RI convention in Calgary, and they were talking about artificial intelligence, and everybody at the table was really nervous. And I was so proud because what Tony told them was, he's like, I don't need to learn this. I have Taylor. And I was like, man, like that's exactly how I want my team to feel about me. Is I'm like a player on the team, and I'm going to take care of some of these things that they're less interested in, and they're going to go and sell a ton of houses. And Anthony does. He's almost at 200 transactions on our team.
yeah. We've Chris here saying in the question one here, I'd love if you guys would do an episode on showing value, as in what are my offers to keep people in the funnel interested.
Woo, I love it. So I always believe that relationships talk on start on the fifth phone call, and it's our job to come up with great reasons to call. It's our job to come up with like, hey, this just happened in your neighborhood. So I would love to break that down and go deep on that. There's definitely that's why we do things like try to achieve forward is because we'll have more to talk about on follow-up calls.
Yeah, I'm ready to put it in
Um,
the list and some of the
yeah,
others.
that's a great one.
Yeah.
Back to the questions that were from beforehand.
Uh,
So what do you see? I see how I can identify legitimate leads.
Yeah, I mean I mean again, I don't know if Vic is here. I think you first have to define to you what a legitimate lead is.
Hmm.
Right? Like we had this conversation in the Wheelhouse group on Facebook. Like Chuck Charlton, I asked like, well, the question like, what's a quality lead to you? And he's like, the Dean Jackson 5-star prospect is essentially his version of a legitimate lead. I'd say that's a legitimate 5-star prospect. It's not a lead. It's like a legitimate lead. Is that just the right contact information? Or is that like a beginning level prospect?
Hmm.
You kind of have to know the
What
difference.
lead means to me is unsorted. I have contact information and we need to sort them, and how we sort them is into timelines. So if I can't establish timeline, you probably won't graduate from lead to anything else in my business, right? Like we'll exhaust our attempts trying to contact you and then kind of move on.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Dean Jackson has a great way, like 5-star,
Yeah.
but
We
you
definitely have
have
to
to
do an episode
decide
with
what's that?
we got to bring Gene onto an episode.
I used to hang out with him a lot on Clubhouse. It'd be good to see him.
It's best. Like I joke, like
Um,
my content is just Dean stuff I've learned from.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Really, when you take a look at Dean's approach to real estate, he found out the things that mattered most, and he just doubled down on those.
Yeah. He's great. Um,
So
conversation.
I got one here.
Try to find the
Charlotte's still
questions
with
that we
us.
haven't already talked about the answers to.
Yeah. So Charlotte's with us. She says, "What's the best way to convert open house leads efficiently?"
Yeah.
So I see open house as a database building activity. So all I'm trying to do is get contact information and then follow up through a conversion process. So in order to get contact information, one, I find that finding ways to get people to slow down in the open house. So you can do this in as many layers as you like. One of which I do is I play lower beat per lower beat per
What
minute
Ralph
music.
does? Do you add in what Ralph does? All his songs say home in them,
No, but Ralph's brilliant.
right? It's
I
like
love
that
it.
whole idea. It's a Dean Jackson thing. If you want to increase the sales of Spanish wine, you play Spanish music. If you want to increase the sales of Italian wine, they play Italian music, and it works. And he took that concept to real estate, and he does slow songs that talk about home because he wants them to feel
Music plays a
home,
lot
slow down.
Music plays a lot in marketing and sales. When you're going through a grocery store, if they have the music bumping, turned up and beat up, that means their grocery store is over capacity and it actually moves people through faster. When my wife is doing CPR, she's thinking of music that's 100 beats per minute. And when top comedians are getting on stage, they actually specifically listen to music that's 92 beats a minute. And that's because that's the cadence that we receive the best. So there's a bunch of things like this. In my mind, like that 92 beats per minute is probably what I'd be looking for my playlist in an open house because I want people to slow down and chat.
Yeah.
So if I get them on the regular human speaking beat frequency, I'm more likely to encourage that. The other thing that I'm going to do is take it from Costco. So Costco does samplers. If you're serving food, you can go and get those cupcake sleeves and then you can put little food in there like samples from Costco. You can break a chocolate bar up, you can put popcorn in them, stuff like that. And then people are going to snack and chat. So
Yeah.
you have to figure out what you're going to talk about. And you can bring things like recent sales nearby because 65% of the people that are coming through are actually sellers, not buyers. So understanding that's going to improve your conversion process because you're going to ask different questions.
Yeah.
Uh, and then getting them chatting, finding things to talk about is the big one. And in the end, you load a conversion question. Hey, do you want to know how much we sell this for when we sell it? That's mine.
I put that on
And
the sign-in sheet. You
hmm,
get their name, then before you ask for their contact info, it's do you want to get updates on this property, including the price when it sells? Check. Then now give me your contact. Where can we send those updates? Because now they're going to
so
give you
that's a ninja move for compliance because now these people have opted in to this information, but essentially opted into information from you.
yeah, it works great. Now I know we're running out of time. I want to respect people's, and I have about 10 minutes before I also have to jump to go pick up kids from school. So like we were talking about, we were thinking of doing this, whether it's a podcast, a regular webinar. I'd actually be curious on that front with people. Like, what would if Taylor and I were to do this very regularly, what be your preferred medium to get it? Like, do you guys really like this one? Would you prefer just a podcast if you listen to it in your car? I mean, we could always take the recordings of these and turn it into a podcast as well. But in terms of like that main place, what would your guys' preference be if we were to do this? Webinars like this. So we could definitely do something like this. Then we get questions, engagement, and then put out the audio after.
As long as the audio is like quality, we could essentially do this where we do it almost like with a crowd.
Yeah.
And then spin it out into podcast episodes because then people can show up for the ones that they like. They can contribute and partake in different ways.
Yeah. Yes, this is recorded and it is well, we're gonna send that recording to everyone. I might also put it up on REM as like an article. I'll just embed the video and then maybe put like some podcast style notes under it because I really think like especially like your Ford thing would be cool to put on there as a thing to learn people with. I like this makes you stop and listen. All right. Well, I feel like this is a pretty good format. We can even set like a recurring webinar up where people just can sign up once and it'll remind them of them all, or they can sign up the individual ones as they're interested in them.
That's good because I need this too. Meaning that like talking it out is how I think. I work up my ideas on the outside. And so as we get into different things, it really helps me.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we can definitely like I like the idea of breaking down your business too. But I also like the idea of bringing sometimes guests in, like talking about like Chris Graham mentioned there, like let's bring Chris up one time. And let's talk that through with him.
Yeah. And
So
we should like go through the list of all of our friends.
yeah.
Like we got some killers around. I spend every Wednesday morning with Glenda Baker out of Atlanta.
Well,
Uh,
Anthony just raised his hand.
oh, there you go.
One that
Anthony
like
Brown.
what and this is what I'm talking like if we get people to especially like submit problems ahead of time and like if we think there's someone better suited to help answer than the two of us, we can bring them on, right?
That'd
Like
be awesome.
I love bringing in experts. It's a great reason to pick someone's brain. Invite them on a webinar or a podcast. It works really well. I used to do that. I do that a lot with people that I maybe, especially when I was starting out, who I couldn't afford their consulting fees. I just invite them on a show.
That's exactly what I was doing. I was doing a podcast called Leadership Line of Sight.
Yeah.
And you can definitely find episodes of that. I've interviewed people from NASA, the foremost expert in quantum computing last year, a lady who has an Order of the British Empire. It was fun. I also interviewed the guy who came up with the concept of the Lion King. He was a Disney executive that originally pitched it as Bambi in Africa.
Isn't it one that's actually based on a Shakespeare play? I feel like I heard that. Because I feel like I recently read that up until that new there's a love movie out recently with Sydney Sweeney that became the number one grossing Shakespeare adaptation. I think Lion King was before that.
Interesting. Well, it definitely does. I think it's after Macbeth, but
I don't
the
know enough about Shakespeare. I've listened
yeah,
to it.
but Charlie Fink was the one who brought it to Disney, and
Yeah.
he's such an interesting character. Works for Forbes now, but I like doing that. I like finding people that were doing amazing stuff and being like, "Hey, do you want to talk to me about it for an hour?" It was amazing, and the relationships I got out of it were incredible.
Yeah, so let's I guess we'll start figuring out when we're gonna do the first official one. And we will start doing these probably around this time each week, because that seems to be the time that you and I, when we just have our regular chats, this is the time that always works.
Let's do it.
Yeah, should be good.
Okay,
All right.
well, you can get both of us on social media everywhere. If there's stuff that you want to hit us with, get into our DMs. We'd love to hear from you. We're looking for those things that you see as being like, how do they do this? Like, you might see some other examples. Like, I've met with some people like Justin Haver to talk about lead generation and things like that. And you might be like, hey, how did they actually do this? And it might not be for you, but it might still be interesting.
Yeah, and we can invite them on and just pick their brain, and like obviously like you guys know the questions to ask, we know some of the questions that like, especially what's great with I think where you and I work well together is you have the best questions on the sales follow-up side. I have some great ones on the marketing side, each understanding that side. But then we can also come with our knowledge gaps on the other side and ask
Hmm.
interesting questions too. So there's some really good, there's some good, we play off each other well, is what I'm saying.
Well, I enjoy it. And let's see if these guys enjoy it. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Appreciate it,
We
everyone.
really appreciate hearing from everybody, and we're going to keep this conversation going.
Yeah, we definitely will. You will be hearing more from us. We gotta figure out a name, do that, and then we'll go from there.
I still like the one you suggested. Andrew suggested the leads are shit as like a name of the podcast,
I
but
do
I'm
like
open
that
to
one.
other ones.
It could be
Maybe like
the leads are and then the poop emoji works.
awesome. Well,
All
good to see you, man. You
right,
take
you
care.
too. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.